Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid. And just over a week now since we decided to take a little break from regular content with the Dairy Raid, and promised you guys though that if I got enough good questions that I would take the time to put together a video like this, which is the type of video that seems to be getting the traction anyways. So here we are. Got a lot of questions and a lot of well wishes from you viewers out there, so thank you for that. It's really nice to feel appreciated and to know that my content is reaching somebody, so I appreciate that. So gonna take some time here. Got 3 questions that I think are topical to the program, and let's see where we are. All right, so first question we got here. Has the last 2 games and the likely ugly game to come versus Oregon, has it eroded all of the what's happened in the 3-game winning streak? Feels like we're back to not knowing the direction of this team. Is that accurate? I'd say it's accurate, but it depends on how you're viewing this team. If you're still setting your sights with higher expectations, then yeah, it's disappointing to see the downward trajectory over these last couple weeks. But if you are a Badger fan who hasn't been a fan of the team and watched the team with rose-colored glasses, tinted glasses, over the past almost 30 years, what you're seeing on the field right now is classic Wisconsin football, which is what everybody wants, right? Everyone wants the program to go back to how it used to be, right? So what I mean by that, well, the Badgers, as has been stated on this channel many times, grew fat and happy, feasting on the bad Big Ten West. And it was pointed out before the Iowa game, I think I saw it on Twitter, that going into the game, if we were still in the East-West alignment of the Big Ten, the Badgers were tied for first place, which shouldn't be a shock to anybody. And so what's happening so far this year is the Badgers are feasting on the bad Big Ten teams, Big Ten West teams, and they're underperforming or flat out getting their butts kicked by the good teams. It's what's happened forever. You know, don't just go back and look at the individual teams that the Badgers have played against. Go back and look at, just say, the teams each season that ended up being ranked at the end of the season, going all the way back to Barry. What's the Badgers' record against those teams? And that's what you're seeing now. You know, Iowa today is a different Iowa than it was 10 years ago, et cetera, et cetera. You know, Iowa was kind of like a lot like Wisconsin back in the day, and now Iowa has pushed themselves into a perennial contender, at least in our portion of the Big Ten. And Penn State, you know, just Badgers against good Big Ten teams. Usually a goose egg. And that's what we've seen. So, but has it eroded the good that we've seen in the previous games? No. Because that's still there. And that shows that the team is showing signs of growth and are building towards something. Unfortunately, like always, you're only as strong as your weakest links. And if teams can exploit our weakest links, then it doesn't matter how good the rest of the team's doing. We're ending up in the position that we are. You know, Christian Allegra can go out and get 16 tackles against Iowa, but nobody notices because the defensive line is getting blown straight back. And, you know, this season, again, it's going to really push towards going in to next season, which is why you're seeing that the Badgers are not done in recruiting for the 2025 class. And you're going to see, I think you're going to see the Kurt Cignetti effect. And there may be a major blowout of certain position groups this offseason. But no, the progress that was made the 3 previous weeks hasn't gone away. It's the weakest links are just still showing. Okay, next question is kind of piggies back. I can't talk. You know what I'm trying to say. Off of the last question. I know it's a lazy thing to do when a team isn't performing up to expectations to blame the coaching. Have you seen habitual errors in the coaching on the coordinator side, neglects in the game plan? No, but for me, maybe it's because I looking at neglects in game planning differently. For me, neglects in game planning are, we do one thing in a certain situation, and every time that situation comes up, this is the thing we do. And no matter how many times it gets stopped, we're still going to do it because that's what we're supposed to do. Paul Chryst was infamous for this. It always seemed like when you went into a season, you could tell what was on his off-season to-do list. And there will always be a certain situation that would come up the following season where the play calling would be so ridiculously predictable that you try not to shouting at the screen when you see it. It's 3rd and 7. Here comes the tray open formation. They're going to throw the stick nod to Jake Ferguson. Or it's 3rd and 1. This year, we're going to run power counter. Play action. Every 3rd down. Or whatever. It always seemed to be like that. For me, that is a neglect in game planning where you are so situationally stuck in a particular play call that you are easy to read. Now, that being said, I still think with this current staff, the one thing I will give them is either, or I will take from them, is either they still don't trust the roster, or they haven't cracked the code yet with this roster. And I think it's a combination of both. And I'm not saying that that's an excuse, because it's not. But what I mean by that is that either they don't trust the roster they have, and that makes it hard for them to game plan around what they don't trust, or they are still missing the pieces to do what they really want to do. And what it's going to come down to is you have two options. You either go hyper conservative and you try to get the best out of everybody, which is going to lower your ceiling, or you go for broke, and knowing that the likely outcome is bad in terms of the scoreboard, but good in terms of the future of the program. And we've seen a mix of that this year, but I really think they need to start pushing that. Again, I still think they're playing certain players more than they should based on seniority or based on respect for the locker room, whatever, stuff like that. I still think Luke Fickell has got his fingers in too many things that as a head coach, he should be trusting his coordinators. I'm not saying just Longo. I think Trussell as well. And they've got to take a step forward. Unfortunately, the problem with that is, this is not the NFL, where if you just decide to quote-unquote tank it for the rest of the season, you're not going to get a higher draft pick next year. You can't come out in college football and just try things for the hell of it, which is why everyone's talking about should they bench Braden Locke, and bring in maybe Metoyer. And very, very rarely does it work where a freshman can come out and compete at the level that you're expecting them to, but more importantly, can compete without taking shots that would lead them to be gun shy in the future. Maybe sometimes you see that with high-level blue chip prospects, but as good as maybe Metoyer is, and as good as he is in comparison to other past Badger recruits, he's not a 5-star blue chipper with all the talent in the world. I mean, you're seeing it now with Raiola at Nebraska, where he's the best QB prospect to get into the Big Ten in a long time, and he's not really living up to expectations. And what would we expect? The same or better from maybe Metoyer? I don't think so. Which, neatly enough, leads into the last question that I'm going to go through, and that is, what current freshman do you see starting next year? I am going to assume, or I'm not going to assume, I'm going to put the caveat on this, but I'm going to say this year's current freshman. That would be this year's, so the class of 2024, and then the red shirts from the class of 2023. I'm not going to say the class of 2025 because I've never seen those kids play college football, so therefore I'm not going to put any weight on any of their stars before I've actually seen them on the football field. So if we let's look at the defense first of who we're going to be missing going into next year. We're losing all of our starting linebackers. Both of our starting, I think we're losing pretty much the entire defense. So if we want to look at it there, obviously Xavier Lucas is going to start. Jonas Oklona is probably going to take the other corner spot. Braden Moore is either going to be one of the safeties or he's going to be the nickel. I also could see Mari Snowden maybe getting into the nickel role. Inside linebacker, obviously Christian Allegro. They're really high on Thomas Heiberger before his earliest season injury kind of led to, tapering on that a little bit. So I'm expecting to see him get in that rotation. Dylan Johnson, for sure, is going to get in the D-line rotation. Offensively, let's see, we're losing 4/5 of the offensive line. So obviously Kevin Haywood's going to get in there. Cubberly has a very good chance of getting in that rotation. He's as maybe as a center. Right tackle, possibly Emerson Mandel, but I'm betting they're going to give Leighton Nelson the first shot to win the right tackle job. Right guard is probably going to be Benchwall, but you could see more young guys getting in that rotation. We've got a big group of true freshmen coming in on the offensive line as well. So there's a very good chance one of those, it's going to be a young team next year. And that's exciting up front, at least. In the backfield, obviously Dupree, I think, is going to be your lead back next year. And with Dylan Jones probably slotting in to be that number 2, with Katie Akamelli being the third down passing back, or change of pace back, Dupree would be the pass catching back. And as of quarterback, it's all going to depend on what happens with Van Dyke. If Van Dyke comes back for another year, I would expect him to be the starter. I would expect maybe Metoyer to be the number 2 and Braden Locke to transfer out. That would be the most likely thing happening. If Van Dyke is gone, then I think it's going to be whoever's higher up on the depth chart after spring between Metoyer and Locke will be number 1. Whoever isn't will transfer out. And then if we can land this kid Carter out of Florida, I would almost guarantee that part of what is making him interested in Wisconsin in the first place is the idea of playing early and getting a lot of NIL money to boot. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets in the rotation or gets looked at early next year, depending on what we see. Landon Locke, unfortunately, I think for him, his injury came at the wrong time. And to be a mid-level 3-star who's coming here probably mostly because he's related to Braden Locke, he's probably going to get left on the wayside, at least at the beginning, and it's also going to depend on if Braden stays. If Braden transfers out, I mean, the other Locke is going to come out as well. So it's going to be a lot of young faces next year. We're also going to be losing at least one starting receiver. I wouldn't be shocked if we see a lot of young faces next year, unless Luke Fickell goes crazy and brings in a ton of transfers, which I think will happen more likely on the defense than it would on the offense. All right, so I think we're going to call it there. So 3 good questions this week. Thank you guys for sending those in. I'm going to post the link to the Google Sheet again. More questions. Get enough that are good, I'm going to make a video. If I don't, well, then we're going to continue on the hiatus. Going to try later in this week to sit down and record some footage for the Iowa breakdown and then spend some time editing it so I can get potentially 1 video instead of making 4. Again, no promises, but I do want to start trying to find a way to make the breakdown videos more entertaining, but more importantly for me, more engaging, and make it more that feels like I'm giving something back. So that'll be going forward. But again, thank you for the support and the well wishes. We're slowly going to ramp this thing back up as we get going with the season here, as long as the negativity doesn't creep back in my head, which you never know is going to happen. So look forward to more positive things to come. All right. Thank you for watching. See you next time.